but there was this one part I'm trying to scroll through if I can find it real quick, because I just thought, wow, what a moment. If you could just, I mean, I think it's obvious, but I don't know, for some reason I did want to ask you if you could just sort of say a little bit more about what's going through your mind at this exact moment.
The time served by the defendants as a judgment in this case. The court at this time, pursuant to CPL Article 510, issues a securing order releasing defendant on his own recognizance.
Why they look so mad?
Here's Joan Gibbs from the Center for Constitutional Rights. Here's Robert Bloom. And I want to say a few things about Robert Bloom later on, so please remind me, because Robert Bloom is still alive, and he's living in severe deprivation on the West Coast.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I know he doesn't want anybody to talk about it. He's a very proud person. He doesn't want anybody to talk about it, but I love that man. It was because of him and Elizabeth Fink and Robert Boyle, and I'm sitting here now talking to you and being able to speak to you. And they were fantastic, man. And it's really sad. I mean, it brought me to tears when I heard about his living condition. It really did. I was so angry, And you know how when you get older, sometimes, you don't want help. You tell people, get out of here. I don't need your help. And sometimes you got to make these old folks sit their ass down and just do what you got to do, But it was really sad.
I hope you're about to take your own advice there, Dhoruba.
Oh, I ain't going out like that.
I'm like...
Yeah. And that's Quaker Anarchist. That's what we're saying. It's scrolling beneath us. Dhoruba's PayPal. We're asking people to send a few dollars today during this episode, or if you see it later, and support. And then to go to blackpowermedia.org and find ways to link up with Kamal's mutual aid program for Panthers and whatever information. I'll put the link to that roundtable Kalanji hosted in the description here. Where there's likely to have been discussion about how to support Sekou, but yeah, we all.
But you asked me about what was going through my mind at that time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay, this is in my book, but you see, what people don't really understand is that that moment, we arrived at that moment where the judge. If you had focused on the judge, I don't know if they got that whole clip where you could actually focus on the judge before he started talking coherently. He was babbling because he was trying to tell the prosecution. He was trying to tell us that we didn't have to say anything. Just sit down, Miss Fink. Sit down. I got this. Just sit down, because we were supposed to respond to the prosecution. I wasn't in court. Up until that moment, I was downstairs in security. So the prosecution was moving to have me have a bench warrant issued for my arrest, saying that I didn't show up for the hearing, and that it's obvious that I wasn't coming. And Liz got a little note from one of the security guards, or somebody in the audience passed a note up to her saying that I was downstairs going through security. So she stood up and she said, Your Honor, my client is downstairs going to security, so if we could have a little brief few minutes so he can come up here, and you should sort of face the crestfallen face of the prosecutor. But that wasn't the deep part. The deep part was how the ancestors intervened. I know what y'all gonna say. Here this Negro come with some mystical shit, okay? But listen, this was real. And it's all about Tanakil. Shout out to girlfriend, my guru, the general, Tanakil Jones. See what happened was Tanakil, months before this, we had lost everything in our appeal. We didn't have a leg to stand on no more. All of my appeals were exhausted. So Liz and Bob and the attorneys were all depressed, and I was in Napanock, I think. So Tanakil had a dream. All right, I know he didn't come to a sleeper but a dream, but she had a dream, right? she kept having this recurring dream that I was getting out of prison. Now you have to understand something. Up until I met Tannehill, the law in New York State forbade, I guess that's the proper past tense, right? Forbade marriage, lifers, people serving a life term, having a marriage, for being married. And because they had just a couple of years implemented before conjugal visits, where the family could come in for 2 or 3 days and live and be in a private trailer on the prison grounds where they could bring in food and cook and have somewhat of, try to keep the relationships going. So I had gotten married as soon as this had happened to Tannehill. And I met Tannehill through Joan Gibbs. Tannehill was an activist in Colombia. She was the chairperson of the North American Support Committee for ANC and against apartheid. But anyway, so what happened, Tannehill was having this dream. And she came in and she was telling me about this dream. And so the mother of my firstborn son, Keisha Shakur, she was in an organization called she was in this African spiritual Egyptian or Asoroset. I don't know if you've heard of it. Asoroset was this African cultural organization that believed in ancient Kemet spirituality, and they followed ancient Egyptian spirituality. So they knew the actions of all the ancient Kemetic deities and forces, Sebek and Atan and all of this stuff, right? So the head of this organization was a brother named Shechem Meshechem. And he was a really deep African spiritualist, really deep. And my ex, mother of my son, she was a priestess in the Saraset. So, you know how sisters are, especially sisters in the movement, she kind of like, she was very important in my life. And when I was arrested, they arrested her too when she was pregnant with my son. And they threw her in prison. And why did they do that? Third World Women's Alliance went buck wild. They were boycotting and picketing the DA's office in Manhattan, demanding that she be released, and all of this stuff. So they released her. And so she had communications with the sister Keisha, whose name then was Matera Reed. And Matera Reed said, she told her about the dream. And she said, come on down to our sessions in Brooklyn. Okay. So Tannehill went down to the sessions and she talked about her dream. And Shechem said, look, your dream is very, really real. People think the dreams are abstract. He said dreams are very real and they reflect spiritual potential and possibilities, not just past trauma. And so she suggested to her that every week they have a ritual. They do a ritual. This was about a month and a half before what you just saw. We'll do a ritual, an all-night ritual, where we'll have the sister there and we'll drum and we'll conjure up the ancestors, and to come to the bottom of this dream, what we should do, how we should move. And Shechem did that for over a month. Keisha would go maybe once or twice a week to these all-night sessions. They're drumming and blowing talcum powder on everybody and dancing into a frenzy to all of this stuff right now. I'm Muslim, so I'm not like with this ritualistic shirk, what you call it, Islam shirk, or assigning partners to God or Allah. And so she had to convince me after Shechem said, look, this is significant. This brother is going to get out of prison, but only if he follows these instructions from the ancestors. One, he has to meditate every day, burning a particular type of scent in his meditations, and he has to focus on seeing a path, a road that was that was surrounded by fire, had fire on the side, burning, blazing fire. But the middle of the road wasn't affected. And I had to stay focused and walk straight down this road and don't look back. If I looked back, it was a wrap, right? And she said, you know, I know that you don't believe in this. So Keisha and my firstborn son and Janica came in on a visit, and they said, look, this is what Keisha, tell him what Shechem and Shechem said. And she told me, I said, yeah, okay, yeah, right. She said, look, it can't hurt if you do this. You don't have to do it in a way like you're praying to an ancestor, you know, because you're Muslim. But meditate after your prayers, after things, burn the scent and meditate and meditate. And I did this for almost 2 months, right? And the meditation became really relaxing, you know, and I tried to envision this path, right? And so what happened was, sure enough, in that period of time, the New York Supreme Court came up with a new case. And it said that any evidence that was withheld from a jury during trial that could have changed the verdict would require a new hearing in order to ascertain whether that evidence withheld would have changed the opinion of the jury. This was a new finding. And this resuscitated my lawyers. It brought them out their gloom, and they started, you know, filing papers and writing, you know, all of this stuff, right? So here comes the spooky part. So they filed the papers, and the court ordered a hearing, right? And in New York State, you know, if you go down for a hearing from upstate New York, you don't take all of your property with you. You just take the legal papers that pertain to the hearing because you're coming right back. It's just a hearing. There was no indication anything decisive would be made to change my sentence. So you would come right back, right? So Shechem and Shechem said, look, this is the thing. We have to get the judge to touch the same papers that Dhoruba touched and that we've had during the ritual. So they had the appeal that Liz wrote up at the ritual. And they dancing and beating drums and blowing talcum powder on it and everything, people passing out, all of this stuff, you know how we do, right? So they had the papers there. So I know this sounds crazy, but it's gonna be in my book. I gotta figure out how to tell it without people saying that this nigga's crazy. Anyway, so she got the papers and brought it, gave it to Liz and them and said, Liz, Tanika told Liz, you know, somehow or other we got to get the judge to touch these papers before he makes the decision, you know. But we had already submitted our papers, right? So they had to lie and say there was an addendum to our original submission and we wanted to give this to the judge for his perusal, right? The judge took the papers, he touched them, right? So now, segue to the court date, right? We get to the court date. Like I said, I was downstairs in security. I hadn't gotten upstairs yet. So the prosecution jumped up and said this was a heinous crime that paralyzed police officers. This man, you know, deserves, you know, even a longer sentence, but we can't do that under the law and yada, yada, yada. And show he has contempt of court. He didn't even show up here and blah, 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 blah. And then when Liz found out, she said, Your Honor, you know, my client's downstairs. So he adjourned for about 5 minutes. And then I came in and I sat down. So again, the prosecutor jumped up and gave his spiel. And the judge did like this. You could sit down. You could sit down. And Miss Fink, and she jumped up and she said, Your Honor, first of all, this has been a long. She went into her spiel. She was going to talk about, you know, how, you know, seas have parted back in the 1920s. And this was a continuation of, you know, of pogroms on black. She's getting ready to go off, right? The judge shut her up. He said, Miss Fink, it's okay. It's okay. You could sit down. And then he says, he started babbling. He couldn't talk. You could see him. He was going, then he started talking. When he talked is what you just heard. He said, I've looked at the papers, I reviewed the papers, and the plaintiff, the defendant, is released in his own recognizance, and the court is ordered to file, the prosecution is ordered to file so and so and so, when we have a return date for such and such. And everybody went crazy. So Liz and all of them looked at me. I said, I told you. I told you. You all didn't believe me when Tanaka was telling y'all, let this judge touch these papers. So really, to this day, I never forgot that sequence and how the judge really couldn't say nothing, but he's released in his own recognizance. He couldn't say nothing. He couldn't talk about how the evidence indicated this or the evidence indicated that. He was just babbling until he got to the part where he said released in his own. That's the only thing he could say clear, right? And so I was released that day, and of course that was one of the greatest moments in my life because I felt that I had triumphed and beat these crackers at their own thing. And so I just wanted to give that little backdrop to the story. You know, a lot of people don't know that. They just think it was just hard work, which it was, of the attorneys, and dedication, which it was, and all of those things. But I never forget how that judge could not speak. Literally, he wasn't making sense to himself. He was so busy trying to calm people down, he started babbling. He said, "But please, released in his own recognizance." So, oh shit, you know, Liz said, she didn't have to say a word, you know. So the first place I went, of course, was to Asaurus set to thank them.